Liu Kang's new era brings with it a ton of change to the MK universe, but this is not like, say, the Legends films or 2021, which are just their own separate continuities where things are different, but we don't ask why from an in-universe perspective, that's just how it is. With Liu Kang crafting this timeline though, each alteration to the classic setting must have a specific motivation behind it, but we are rarely given much insight into his thought process. I had the idea that the game could have included bios or endings that focus on Liu Kang discussing these motivations, explaining why evil exists at all, or why some characters are so radically different. So I wrote up some explanations, having our man explain his rationale, diving deep into past characterizations and developments to justify why Kuai Liang is now Scorpion, why Shang Tsung was not erased, and why Molina is now Kitana's older sister. I now present to you the bios of the 30 canonical characters, with Elective Cross 02 in the role of Liu Kang. Enjoy.
I am Liu Kang, the Fire God of Earthrealm, and the former Keeper of Time. In prior timelines, I was the champion of the realms, destined to do battle with those that would threaten them. I typically emerged the victor, and was thus considered a threat to Kronika's design. She conspired to remove me from the board, or to convert my skills into a force for evil. But her plans finally caught up with her, and I emerged as the one tasked with forging this newest timeline. I peered into all prior timelines to observe where things went wrong and where they could go right. I now use my deeper understanding of the key players in the fate of the realms to craft a new reality. The wicked are now forces for good, maintaining my peace, or else living worthless, harmless lives. Should this timeline fail, there may not be another chance. I must get this right the first time. Shang Tsung was my final opponent in reaching this current juncture. I gambled the lives of many friends and allies to ensure that I acquired Kronika's crown in the end, and it very nearly cost me everything. Shang Tsung can be considered my equal and opposite, my dark reflection, who is the greatest threat to the realms across all of time. Despite Kronika's claims, one cannot erase a soul from reality. They can be repurposed, redistributed, but they must always exist in some way. That is why Shang Tsung must exist once again, and why I must find a way to minimize his potential. I have stripped him of his magic, to leave him worthless to any malefactors into whose good graces he might worm his way. Shang Tsung will exist in my new era, but his existence will be fleeting and unnoticed by the realms. This I must do with all of his ilk. When selecting a new champion to take my place in this timeline, of course Kung Lao was my first choice. My faithful friend and comrade has long deserved his chance to shine. But no matter the humble upbringing he may receive, there is a hunger for glory that cannot be fully sated. It has led him to his death in multiple timelines. I worry that granting him such glory in his youth, before he has had time to mature and wizen, may lead to him becoming drunk on his success. I believe keeping him in his current role as my second champion is for the best, but his time will come once he is ready for it. I have arranged for a change in mentorship. As highly as I value Master Bo Rai Cho's guidance, he was never able to restrain Kung Lao's pride. In older timelines, only I was trained by him. Kung Lao had a different mentor, Madame Bo. By bringing her back into the picture, I may be able to bring Kung Lao back to his more humble roots. After much deliberation, I turned to Raiden as my new champion. In part, it is due to my own shift into his former position. My familiarity with our former dynamic allows me to better plan around conflicts that might arise within his lifetime. Raiden and Fire God Liu Kang will be just as capable of dealing with a threat as Liu Kang and Thunder God Raiden, but his constant endpoint of corruption is cause for great concern. I've sealed Raiden's power inside his old amulet. Once I am convinced he can be steered away from his dark destiny, I will gift the amulet to him. The need to earn this power will help to humble him, which should aid in stemming the tide of his descent into darkness. And more crucially, should my judgment prove flawed, I will be able to take that power away from him. Johnny Cage has proven himself a man capable of great change. While destined to begin with the shallow life of a Hollywood star, he can and will grow into a worthy contender for Earthrealm's champion, as will his daughter Cassandra. I must guide him through that journey, as Lord Raiden would have. But my plans for Sonya Blade may lead to a different journey than those of previous timelines. I'll have to deprive him of that bond for now, possibly forever. But one thing I can do to make up for this is to rewrite his original marriage. Cindy Ford was a terrible match for him. Him being divorced before reaching his 30s is evidence enough of that, but perhaps he can find happiness with Christina instead. I had no idea that Kenshi Takahashi's history before joining the Special Forces was one built on a life of crime, not until I peered into prior timelines. It's not something that can be simply erased without risking his eventual rise to heroism. I'll have to allow it to remain, and personally guide him onto the path of the righteous. There is one constant of his life that I can change, however. I can allow him to keep his sight. Without Shang Tsung's knowledge of sorcery, he can no longer trick Kenshi into blindness at the House of Pikara. If nothing else, he will be able to look upon his son's face this go-around. The original Sub-Zero, Bi-Han, was always destined to descend into the Netherrealm after his sins caught up with him, transforming him into the dangerous wraith Noob Saibot. It is this descent that I wish to prevent. His rivalry with his Shirai Ryu counterpart was a key part of this. With Kuai Liang taking up the role this time, Bi-Han now has Scorpion as a supportive force in his life, not an antagonistic one. Kuai Liang always fought to save his brother's soul, stopping only once he realized he was beyond saving. If Kuai Liang can remain by his brother's side for longer, with the Lin Kuei now a clan of virtuous defenders instead of ignoble assassins, I believe Bi-Han can achieve a new fate in my new era, different from any that has come before. Now I must trust that his true nature is as noble as I have come to believe. Previously, Scorpion was a man by the name of Hanzo Hasashi. His was a life plagued by tragedy. I have removed him from the destiny of the Scorpion persona, and instead placed Kuai Liang, the second Sub-Zero, into that role. Kuai Liang was always more level-headed than Hanzo, and I hope he can bring a level of self-control to Scorpion that will keep him from following Hanzo's path. And with Scorpion now a part of the Lin Kuei, and the Shirai Ryu no longer present as an enemy faction, Scorpion should be able to keep Sub-Zero from descending down his own dark path. Only time will tell if this gambit will pay off, or if I have denied Earthrealm one of its key champions. Smoke was always a loyal friend to Kuai Liang, until his inevitable corruption by automation or undeath. I placed his family close to the Lin Kuei's home to ensure he would join their ranks and help to keep Bi-Han in line. I did not foresee that his family would be killed, but I am pleased that the father of the two brothers took Tomas in as his third son. Although unplanned, this will help to give Bi-Han another reason to remain on the side of good. If Smoke can be as loyal a brother to Bi-Han as he was a friend to Kuai Liang, the Lin Kuei may well become Earthrealm's most reliable protective force, eclipsing even the White Lotus. The Sindel of the previous timeline was a vile, manipulative, power-hungry woman who was in love with Shao Kahn. Peering back into earlier timelines, I found that the woman Kitana thought her mother is exactly who Sindel is at heart. It was Kronika's manipulations in her timeline resets that changed Sindel to keep her from tipping the balance of power in the favor of good. I have undone this and granted her a longer life, surrounded by a loving family of 4. Even after Jared's assassination, I continued my friendly relations with the Empress to keep her grief from turning her into the monster Kronika cast her as. She has become hardened by Jared's death, which destroyed prior incarnations. I believe I am on the right path with Sindel this time, and she has the potential to maintain Outworld's peace for many centuries to come. Molina of past eras was an intricate amalgamation of myriad complexes and anxieties. Her desire to be loved and accepted was rarely granted due to her nature as a half-Takatan clone of Kitana. Upon learning the truth, Kitana always rejected her. Her purpose was to be a mere tool for Shao Kahn, but she had ambitions to rule, typically brought out by the Emperor's death. But she was also loyal to whatever master she served, so desperate was she to find a place of acceptance. By making her Kitana's true sister and a natural-born Edanian, I have given Molina a chance to be accepted. She has 2 parents and a sister, all of whom love her dearly, and her ambition will not lead her towards evil, as she is ahead of Kitana in the line of succession. And with Tanya of the Umgadi always close by, Molina will find love coming from all sides. This Molina will be quite unlike any that has come before. Kitana never held ambitions to lead a realm. The role was thrust upon her last time, and the ease with which her allies were swayed against her by Shao Kahn and Sindel indicates that her reluctance may be reflected in her ability. That is why I have made her the younger of the two sisters, to place her ambitious doppelganger ahead of her in the order of succession. Kitana has always excelled in supporting the throne, be it Outworld's or Edenia's. She will continue to defend and serve her mother and sister in this manner, leaving the throne to those more invested in it, while she retains the freedom she always cherished. Alas, in light of my new role, I must give up my pursuit of love with her, but I will support whoever her heart draws her towards, and do all in my power to ensure that Kitana's long life is a truly fulfilling one. She deserves it after all she has endured. The security of Outworld's throne is of paramount import in my new era. Therefore, the royal family needs a worthy protector. In previous timelines, Lemay has served as a champion and leader of the people of Sundo, and a student of Master Borai Cho. She is at once tenacious and maternal. I knew she would make a fine defender of the throne, and so I conceived the Umgadi, a force of female warriors solely dedicated to the protection of the royal family. I hoped this force would help keep Jared and Sindel safe. I was wrong, but my faith in Lemay was not misplaced, for she has continued to act as a protector for Outworld's people, in spite of her disgrace as an Umgadi. Tanya, it transpires, has always been a woman driven by a desire to defend her homerealm. In past timelines, she allied with the likes of Shinnok and Onaga to depose what she perceived as an unworthy ruler in Sindel, or with Molina at the promise of Edenia's release from its merger with Outworld. Her potential for heroism was difficult to see, but it was always there. She simply needs a noble goal and a peaceful era in order to show it. That is why I placed her within the Umgadi, as a protector of the throne. Without a home realm annexed by a conqueror, Tanya's desire to protect her realm is now focused on defending its royal family rather than deposing it. This will factor into the redemption of Molina as well, as the two formed an intimate bond in the previous reality. That should help keep the two of them on the straight and narrow, together. Rain was always driven by an intense sense of self-importance. His arrogance drove him to fight for his self-proclaimed rightful place at the top of the food chain. This stemmed from his nature as a demigod, the bastard son of Argus. Even before he knew the full extent of his heritage, he always knew he was not like those around him. I have taken away his godhood, and with it his power. Now his natural talent in hydromancy is a learned skill. The journey towards mastery will humble him, replace his vanity with humility, as he earns his rightful place at the top. This will keep him loyal to those who granted him this opportunity to reach his current station, the Imperial Academy of Sorcery and the royal family that funds it. Reptile is a being whose villainy was born out of desperation. As the last known survivor of his species, Syzoth was easily swayed by those who claimed to be capable of reviving the Saurians, but few were truly capable and willing to assist him. With Shinnok's destiny altered, there was no war of the gods, and with Shao Kahn's, there was no conquest of Zeterra. The Saurians continue to exist and thrive as a native race of Outworld, rather than as conquered refugees who lost two homes. With this, Syzoth can now live peacefully with his people, should he so choose. But should the time come for him to become a major player yet again, I am certain I will be able to dissuade him from returning to the role of a villain through an open palm rather than a closed fist. There was a time when Shao Kahn was not the mad conqueror sat atop the throne of Outworld. Before then, he was General Shao, who headed up Onaga's armies when the Dragon King ruled the realm. There was a sense of duty to his home realm that drove Shao then. It was only later that his ambitions, stoked by the influence of the One Being, drove him to overthrow his master. I reverted Shao to his duty-bound form, but physically lacking in strength. I hoped he would serve Outworld's throne in a more scholarly way, putting his sly intellect to use in maintaining peace. However, his father found a way to grant him strength through means yet unknown to me. Shao now stands as a general once more, serving Empress Sindel. I can only hope my changes will help maintain his sense of duty. If not, I may have to intervene to prevent him from overthrowing Sindel in this timeline as well. Reiko always idolized Shao Kahn. In some timelines, the Emperor made him his general and strategist, even his adopted son. This inflated the cunning warrior's ego and ambitions to new heights. Without such a high station to be granted by Shao, Reiko will remain his subordinate at what I hope is a low enough rank to not stoke the fires of ambition. So long as Shao continues to dutifully serve the throne, so too will Reiko. Baraka has always looked out for his people. marginalized mutants from the fringes of the wastelands. The Tarkatans would be better off as regular Outworlders, removing their savage, bloodthirsty nature. That is why I erased the Tarkatans as a race, allowing them to live among their fellow Outworlders in peace. And Baraka himself now has a family to protect. That should be enough to keep him living the humble life of a merchant, and not that of the leader of a force that Shao Kahn would dispatch to slaughter his greatest foes, such as the Shaolin. The existence of the Tarkat disease is cause for concern, however. I must wonder if this is a result of time attempting somehow to correct itself against my changes, or if there is a malefactor at work, trying to corrupt my new era. Whatever the case, I will not allow this corruption to overcome my vision. The Shokan have long been at war with the Centaurs. Their bloody history spanned millennia of many a timeline. That is why I have placed both races under the rule of the throne. Under Shao Kahn, their conflict was almost encouraged, incentivized by the benefits of the Emperor's favor. Beneath Emperor Sindel, however, there is unity, as the rival races are held in equal regard. With this, I believe that Motaro can simply stand as an example to his people, not their last hope to edge out the Shokan. Goro has been both a feared enemy and a revered ally to the forces of light. When not under Shao Kahn's thumb, he is a mighty comrade, one even Kitana has mourned the loss of. With Shao stripped of his status and a benevolent ruler now on the throne, Goro can now put his champion's might to use for a noble cause, defending the peace of Outworld rather than enforcing its oppression. Quanchi was a demonic sorcerer of the Netherrealm in past timelines. I have separated him from this history by turning him into an Outworlder. He will live a life of obscurity, far away from an education in sorcery, much like Shang Tsung. Combined with the neutralization of Shinnok, this will also eliminate the Brotherhood of Shadow from my timeline, essentially neutralizing the Netherrealm at large as a major player, following the massive threat the Revenants posed last time. And through this depowering, his influence over the lives of Sindel, Bihan, Scorpion, and countless others is now erased. The realms will be far better off without either scheming sorcerer exerting their wills upon others. Serena is a demon of the Netherrealm. In previous timelines, she proved a valuable ally against Quanchi once she broke free of his service. With the sorcerer now neutralized, Serena is free to choose her own destiny. With any luck, her Netherrealm sisters will follow her example and find their own inner nobility. Falling to Quanchi's sorcery was a concern in the past, but without his power, even should their paths cross again, Quanchi will be no more capable of dominating Serena than an ant is capable of dominating a tiger. Ashra is a demon who seeks freedom from the Netherrealm's corrupting influence. This journey will be easier without the Brotherhood of Shadow dragging her so deep into darkness before her quest even begins. She will also find her quest to slay demonic forces sidetracked less often by the absence of Noob Saibot and Ermac. It is her conflict with the people of Vaeternus that concerns me. Her blade was created to slay the Moroi, and its existence is a detail I overlooked. With her quest now requiring far less battle than is typical, I can simply wait for her to achieve her full purification, and then appear before her as a god to retrieve the holy blade from her, and keep it from provoking Vaeternus into becoming a threat. Rarely a major player in the affairs of the realms, Vaeternus is no longer doomed to be conquered by Outworld. This leaves Nitada of the Moroi people without a clear role in this new era. Her devotion to her realm and people have led her to unwittingly facilitate the rise of great evils, such as Onaga and even Armageddon itself. She will always fight for her people, which could create either a valued ally or an enemy to be feared. But with her realm free from annexation and no war between it and others, her devotion should not be stoked into blind extremism this time. Chaos Realm has long been a problem among the realms. Havoc, a cleric of chaos, has risen as a threat in numerous past timelines. I have erased Chaos Realm from the equation and remade its denizens as Order Realmers. Saito was the opposite extreme of Chaos Realm, hence its nickname. By combining the two, I hope to achieve a sense of balance between the two extremes. To that end, Havoc is now a native Order Realmer under the name of Dairu, borrowed from a man who previously saw the error in Saito's extremes and helped fight for a better way. Havoc will now serve as an agent, not of chaos, but of freedom, should Saito once again fall to totalitarianism. Darius of the Order Realm needs little alteration. While often extreme in his methods, his enemy was far more extreme in its tight control over Saito. With the balance I have forged in that realm, Darius may continue his role as a peacekeeper for his home, but without the need to counter such an extreme opposite. He and Havoc have much in common, and I hope that commonality will allow them to work together in Saito's best interest. Geras was a construct of Kronika's design, the enforcer of her will, but he was no more than a slave, a tool in her eyes. I see the potential of Geras as a companion and advisor, especially in the absence of Lord Raiden. I suspected that Geras' lack of victories in the conflict with Kronika was a sign of his waning devotion, his true desire being the downfall of his mistress. That Geras is capable of such rebellion means he will be a valuable ally as I exert my own will over reality. He was witness to each of Kronika's attempts and can warn me away from making the same mistakes. Once my timeline was fully planned out and enacted, I stepped away from the role of timekeeper, leaving that position to Geras. He now watches over the hourglass and will warn me of any threats to the stability of my new era. I had left IRAC out of my plans for the new era. As an amalgamation of the souls of conquered warriors, I felt it better to allow these souls to rest in peace. But Quanchi has created an IRAC in this timeline, likely under the guidance of Damashi. But King Jared, one of the souls within the amalgamation, has managed to seize control of this new incarnation. He now serves Empress Molina, guiding her as he always confided in me that he one day would. But I fear that his dominance of IRAC is not permanent. The other souls within are constantly battling to usurp Jared's place at the head of the table. Sindel is with him now, aiding the defense of his dominance. I must keep watch over IRAC and be ready to intervene in the event a less honorable warrior should gain control of the collective. Takada's presence remains a mystery to me. While I plan to have Kenshi meet Tsuchin once he had conquered his demons and have their son again, Takada should not exist for quite some time yet, certainly not as an adult. I suspect his presence at this time is an omen of things to come. Could it be that I will once again need to harness the power of the hourglass to send warriors into the past to avert a terrible future? Or is he another of the invaders that have begun to emerge in the aftermath of the battle with Shang Tsung? Only time will tell. I must confront him and get to the bottom of this.
If you liked this video, be thankful to Elective Cross because the video would have been absolute garbage if I'd been the one narrating it. Go check out his demo reel and consider getting in touch with him for your own projects.